Hello science people, Amy here. Today we are doing an experiment at home. So it's slightly different to the other experiment videos I've been doing where I've been in the lab. Today I'm going to be in the kitchen and I'm going to be making some acid-base indicators at home and then testing them out with some of the different supplies I've got around the house. So in a little bit, I will run through the list of the different materials I'm using, but for our purposes now, let's talk about what an acid-base indicator is. So a lot of acids, so think of vinegar or like different juices, a lot of them tend to be quite pale in colour, and when you think about bases, it's stuff that's bitter. So obviously I wouldn't recommend tasting bleach, but bleach is very basic. Soap, that sort of slippery feeling of soap, that's a base as well. So those tend to be colourless, and when you mix them, you tend to make colourless things. So how can we tell the pH of one of those things? We need to use some particular chemicals that change colour depending on their pH. Now, a lot of these are found in nature. So the indicators that I'm going to be making today are made from beetroot and turmeric. There are also, you can also make hibiscus indicators. Red cabbage is another really good one. Most brightly coloured organic compounds change colour at different pHs. There are even some plants that, depending on the pH of the soil, the flowers grow different colours. So I'm just going to pause that while I find a picture online. Okay, so what we've got here is a picture of some hydrangeas that have been grown in different pH conditions. Now, as you can see, we range in colour from a blue all the way through to a pink. Now, the blue form, it's actually to do with the interactions between aluminium ions in the soil and acid concentrations. Year 11s, we will talk about this in the context of acid deposition later on in the chemistry SL curriculum. But as our pH increases, as the concentration of H+ gets lower for my year 11s, what's going to happen is I'm going to see more of this blue form of flower. And then as I get more basic, I'm going to see more of this red form of flower. Sorry, more acidic, I'm going to see more red. My apologies. So I'm going to stop this intro video here. We're going to go and make some indicators in the kitchen. Then we're going to test them. And then I'm going to come back for a quick wrap up and an explanation of what I'd like you to try. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in a minute. So, I am going to be making two indicators today. I'm going to be making a beetroot indicator and an indicator using turmeric. So, let's start with the beetroot indicator. Okay, so what I've got here, I've got some beetroots, a tiny little saucepan, chopping board, knife, and a peeler. Because beetroot stains, and it's that pigment we're going to be using as our indicator, if you want, you can wear gloves, but I tend not to because they can make me a bit clumsy. So the main reason I'm using beetroots is I like eating them. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to top and tail my beetroots and then peel them. And the key point is I am going to be using my beetroot peelings. So I'm going to roast my beetroots for me to eat, but these peelings are what I'm going to use to make my indicator. So I'm just going to peel my beetroots and pop the peelings into my little saucepan, and I'll come back to you once I've done my 3 beetroots. So now that my hands look sufficiently like a Nick Cave song, and I've got my peelings in here, The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tops and tails of my beetroot and just chop them up finely and also pop them in my saucepan. Okay, so the centre of those beetroots doesn't go to waste. I'm going to show you what I do with the beetroot. This is just a cooking recipe, it isn't a science thing. So I've just cut up my beetroot into pieces. I'm going to add some rosemary. Don't bother buying rosemary, just go for your government allowed walk and steal some off like nature strips. It grows pretty free. So I'm just going to strip some rosemary and cut it up, and then put some oil into my beetroot. Then put that on a baking pan and it goes in the oven basically until the beetroot is soft. So give me just a sec to get this done and I'll show you what it looks like once it's on the pan. So this is what my beetroot looks like. I'm just going to put some salt and pepper on them and then they go into the oven. Okay, so they go into the oven until they're soft. They should kind of feel like slightly underdone carrots when you put a fork into them. Okay, but let's get back to our science. So what I've got here is my little saucepan that's got my beetroot peelings and the tops and tails of the beetroot that I've just cut up finely. And I am going to add just normal tap water so that my beetroot is just about covered. The less water you use, the more concentrated your beetroot pigment is going to be, so the more effective it's going to be as an indicator. So go under rather than over. You can always top it up. So give me just a second, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so I've added my water, so what that looks like. You see how I've still got some of my beetroot hanging out? That's fine. And that water has already started to go red, but I really want to make sure I'm extracting as much of that pigment as I can. So I'm going to put my stove burner on and then let that boil. So while that's going, I might start making my turmeric indicator. Okay, so the turmeric indicator is a lot easier. All you need is, and I'm just getting some water now, this one is made cold. So all I've got here is, and you can tell I haven't wiped down my bench after the beetroot, I have my turmeric powder, just mixing bowls and just some cold tap water. So I'm going to add, I'm using about half a dessert spoon of turmeric. And then you're adding in, I'm just going to see if I can work out how to do this. Excuse me a tick. So I am going to add enough water to cover my turmeric and make a very strong yellowish coloured liquid and give it a mix. Now when we use this as an indicator, we're actually going to let this sit for a while so that the turmeric settles to the bottom of my bowl and I'm left with the yellowish liquid on top. Now this part of it is a lot easier if you've got a dropper at home. If you don't, I'll show you how to do that once my beetroot is cooked, once my beetroot indicator is done, and once this has had some time to settle. You see how that is a nice, strong, yellowish coloured liquid. Once that settles, we will have a clear yellowish liquid, or a mostly clear yellowish liquid, on top of the powdered turmeric that didn't dissolve in the water. So let's just leave that off to the side for the moment. And I'll see you once my indicators are ready. So for part of your work this week, I'm going to ask you to make an indicator or two at home. But some of you might not have beetroot. I'm guessing a lot of you do have turmeric, but what can you use if you don't have beetroot? You can try, this is an experiment, we don't quite know how it's going to work out. You can have a try with something like purple cabbage. You could have a try with brightly coloured flowers. So I've done a similar experiment to this with dark red hibiscus flowers. So hibiscus are the flowers that you see on, sorry, I keep looking over my shoulder to make sure my beetroot isn't boiling over. Hibiscus are the flowers that you see on Hawaiian shirts. So you can take hibiscus flowers, or if you've got roses that have bloomed early, particularly if they're like dark red, take some of those older flowers and you can crush them up using a mortar and pestle. So grind them up in the mortar and pestle and add a tiny, tiny bit of water to try and extract that pigment. If you want to get fancy about it, you could ask your parents if they have any methylated spirits. That can often be really effective at extracting those coloured pigments. But if you've got beetroot, that's fantastic. Turmeric works really well, I've heard. I've never actually done the turmeric myself. Red cabbage works really well. I've also heard that you can use brightly coloured, like dark berries. So if you've got freezer blueberries, freezer blackberries, apparently they work as well. So if you've got berries, if they're freezer berries, what I'd suggest you do is either microwave them or let them defrost, add a little bit of water and then crush them up with a spoon or something like that, and then filter out the seeds. So just use a sieve to filter out the seeds, or just like we're about to do with our turmeric water, you can use a spoon and sort of lift the clear water off the top, the clear solution off the top. Now, my beetroot is starting to boil, so I might show you what that looks like. So I might grab that to prop my computer up. So as my beetroot has softened and cooked, it's dropped just below the level of the water. And I don't know, can you see that? But you should be able to see how intense that reddish colour is getting, which is exactly what we want. One thing with this, because of the way the commercial canning process works, you can't use the liquid from canned beetroots because that has special chemicals added to it so the beetroots don't change their colour when we put them in different pHs. So that's been boiling for a little while now. I stopped my video for a while in between my segments. So I'm actually going to turn that off now and let it cool down on the stove, leaving that solid beetroot in there so it steeps like tea. Oh, the other thing you can use, sorry, I've just remembered this. If you've got any reddish coloured teas, they tend to be able to change their colour in different pHs as well. So, for example, I think it's like some types of rosehip tea. You can also get, I can't remember the name, but there are some coloured teas. Again, we're after natural pigments, so not the sort of tea that you can get like in packets that you're meant to have with like boba, pearls. We're talking about teas that come from leaves. So I've got my beetroot cooling, I've got my turmeric just settling. So I'm going to stop this video for now, and then I'm going to, so in about half an hour, I will filter my beetroot and restart my video so I can show you some of the colour changes we'll be expecting. So for this bit, I'm going to be using, I think I've got some bleach under the bathroom sink. If you're using bleach, please check with your parents and please be careful with it. I'm going to use some vinegar from the pantry. That one you may not need to check with parents. If you don't have vinegar, you can use lemon juice. I would suggest lemon juice rather than orange juice just because of the colour. And I would like a weak base. What have I got? Oh, I have baking soda. So I'm going to make up some baking soda into a liquid and we're going to test the pH of that. So that'll do us for now. I'll see you in about half an hour, which will be half an hour for me. It'll be like seconds for you. Cheers. Okay, so as promised, I'm back in about half an hour. And what I've got here is my turmeric water. Now, you might not be able to see it on the screen, but it has separated so that there is a liquid on the top and then the turmeric down the bottom. So I can lift up and get a reasonably clear solution. The other thing I've got, and that's still over on the stove, I've also got my beetroot. So I'm just going to grab a sieve and we'll strain that. Okay, so my beetroot is still quite warm, so I'm going to be careful. And you might want another person to help you, but joys of living alone, I don't have that person. So I'm just going to pour, oh, looking like a murder scene. I'm just going to pour my beetroot liquid into my container. Okay, now that's enough of that. That's more than enough beetroot for my purposes. So I'm just going to pause and clean up on my bench and then I'll come back and we'll start testing those solutions. Where's my mouse? Where's my mouse? Okay, so what I've got here is I've got the 4 different solutions I'm going to test. So in this container, I'm going to use the bleach. I'm going to make up some bicarb soda, baking soda solution. So I'm just going to add like a teaspoon of this into here and add some water just to make it into a paste. I'm just going to have tap water in this one, which is why there's nothing standing behind it. And I'm just going to put some vinegar into this one. So let me do that and then we'll get our indicator. Okay, so you might not be able to see, but I have used the very tiniest amount of bleach. That's because it is pretty dangerous and also I don't have much left in my bottle. I've been doing a bit of cleaning while I'm in ISO and I'm nearly out. So remember, I've got bleach, baking soda, bicarb soda, normal tap water and some vinegar. So we're going to start by testing our turmeric liquid. So I'm going to, let me see, tilt this to the side and pick up some of that yellowish liquid and I'm going to add it to each of my things. Now I'm going to give them a bit of a mix. Oh, I might, actually, no, we know what turmeric water looks like. Oh, so that's worked quite nicely. So you can see, can you, in my bleach, that turmeric has gone like a little bit reddish and the actual flecks of turmeric that are in that bowl have gone quite dark compared to my vinegar where it stayed at that turmeric yellow colour. As I've become more basic, my turmeric has got more red. Okay, one thing that is super important when it comes to cleaning up, because I'm about to empty out these solutions and go again with beetroot. One thing that is really super important is that you do not tip bleach and vinegar down the sink at the same time. So put the bleach down the sink, run a whole bunch of water after it, and then add the vinegar, or vice versa. Your history teacher will be able to tell you why it's a very bad idea to combine bleach and vinegar. Okay, so my 4 liquids are in the same relative positions they were earlier. So I've got bleach, then baking soda, then water, then vinegar. And I'm just going to add some of my beetroot liquid. Now, because I don't want to try and mess about with spoons, I'm just going to pour it using the lip of my container. And hopefully this changes. Ooh, that's pretty. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So let's have a look at, let's start with our bleach, because what's happening there is really interesting. So how can I do this? So when I first added the beetroot, it went a brownish colour, but then the bleach started reacting with the beetroot and actually has turned it a brownish colour, but is now, and you might be able to see it, is reacting with the beetroot and decolorizing it. It's actually breaking down those pigments. And as we move across, we've got our baking soda, which is that sort of garnety purplish red. Then you've got your vinegar and your tap water, which are just like jelly red. So as I have gone from an acid through neutral, through a weak base, through to a strong base, we can see a difference in colour there. Okay, thank you so much. I was really happy with how that worked out, actually. If you are after something that is a strong base, but you don't have bleach at home, if you ask your parents, and again, you need to be super careful with this, there is something called drain cleaner, which is sometimes kept in like a powdered form. Make sure you're wearing washing gloves when you use that stuff though. I probably should have been wearing them for the bleach as well, but my hands are that wrecked from chemicals anyway. So if you want to wear gloves, particularly when you're handling base or drain cleaner. But yes, what I would like you to do, and this will be spelt out in greater detail in the lesson plans, I would like you to make some indicator at home. If you are going on your shopping trip, you might want to pick up some berries or some cabbage. But if I'm going to ask each of you to make 2 indicators, I want you to make at least 1 indicator that I didn't. So I don't want you to make beetroot and turmeric. You could make beetroot and cabbage, that's cool. Or you could make turmeric and hibiscus. But I don't want you to do a complete replication of my experiment, please. Okay, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I shall see you next time. Bye.